Hello class, since I can't be here with you today, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick demo video for you on how to do a soft reline in the lab setting. It's a little bit different in a lab setting because we are going to be doing a soft reline on a model. So we have a partial, or not a partial denture, a full denture and a model, and we're going to be adding a soft reline to this denture. Typically a patient will have a nice warm oral environment as well as a wet oral environment, which we don't have in the lab setting. So I'm going to show you the few extra steps we have to do to create that environment and get a successful soft reline. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some Vaseline on a cotton tipped applicator, very little Vaseline. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around my model and I'm going to place a thin layer of Vaseline on any areas of the model that are going to touch the soft reline material. So that would be the full alveolar ridge. I also like to put a little bit kind of on the outside because sometimes we have a little bit of overflow, and this will help the material not stick to the model, and we'll be able to get it off nice and easy. So we'll go around the model. You shouldn't see any like blobs of Vaseline. Again, we just want a really nice thin layer, not blobs. There we go. Now we want to check the inside of our denture to make sure that it's nice and clean. These have been used many, many times in lab to place soft relines over and over and over. And you'll notice that there are little bits and remnants of previous soft relines on these. Your main thing is you really want to make sure there's no big chunks on the inner surface where this is going to sit on the ridge. If you do see any large chunks, you can use this little white tool to just kind of scrape them out and just make sure you've got a nice clean working surface to start with. All right, now we have our denture. We have our model that's been prepped. There's one more step we need to do to the denture itself to prep it. There's a small bottle on your tray. This is called separator for linol. The material we're using to do our reline is linol, and this separator material is what we're going to actually put on the portion of the denture that we don't want our soft reline to go. So we want soft reline to go inside of the groove of our denture, which is where it's going to sit on the ridge. But we don't want any soft reline on the outside. So we're just gonna take this separator and paint a light coat, just like you did with the Vaseline on the model. Just a really light coat on these outer buccal and lingual surfaces of our denture. You don't need to get it up on the teeth or anything like that. Hopefully you don't have soft reline material going there. And then we'll set that aside. Oh, one other thing, please make sure when you're using these dentures and models that you're very careful with them. These dentures, especially because they're a mandibular denture, if you dropped this on the counter or the floor, it would have a tendency to crack, and then we would have to get it repaired. I can't repair it. We would have to send it out to a laboratory to get it actually repaired. So please be gentle when you're working with these and work over a countertop. Don't stand and work over the floor. All right, so we've got our materials prepped. Now we are going to get our powder and liquid ready to go so that we can mix our reline material. With the liquid, we're going to use the eyedropper that comes with it, and we're going to get 4 full milliliters of liquid into this cup that it comes with. So that was 1.5 milliliters is what I got the first time. Then I was able to get 2, so I need a half a milliliter more. And there we have our half. So now we have a full 2 milliliters in our cup. Then what we're gonna do is take this little glass vial and we're going to measure 10 milliliters of powder into the glass vial. So for this, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the bottle and just squeeze the powder in, and we're going to squeeze it in until we get to the 10 milliliter line. If it feels like it gets stuck in the bottle, just give it a little shake. Keep squeezing. And there we have our 10 milliliters of powder. Now we're ready to mix. Our mixing tool is this little white spatula tool. We're going to take the powder and we're going to dump it into the liquid. Let's give it a tap to make sure it's all out. And then we're going to start mixing the powder and liquid together. Ideally, you want to continue to mix this for about 30 seconds to make sure you have a nice, smooth, incorporated mix. It doesn't take too long to mix it. This stuff is not going to set up on you, so don't worry about having to mix it super fast and get it into your denture right away, because it takes a while for this to set. So give it a good, nice mixing time. Make sure it's nice and smooth. And the consistency of it, it'll be pretty thick. It kind of has a bit of a grainy consistency to it, but it should be smooth. And then when we're ready to apply it to the denture, you're just gonna take a little bit on your spatula and you're filling the denture, kind of like you filled your impression trays for taking an alginate. We're gonna try to keep the material inside the denture and not all over the place. We're trying to keep everything clean. Remember, this is meant to be for a patient, so we want to make sure it is as best we can, nice and smooth. So I'm just filling the whole inside of the denture. Then what I'm gonna do is, because there's a little bit of excess on some of these areas, I'm just gonna take my finger and go around and get any big bits of excess off. So I've got it nice and filled. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take my model and I'm gonna go ahead and seat the denture on the model, and then I'm going to press down. And you'll see that it squishes out the sides. That's okay. So remember, we put that separator on the outside. On a patient, this would kind of squish up into their vestibule, which is also okay. And then we're gonna wait for this to set. On a human mouth, we have a nice, warm, wet environment, and this would set fairly quickly in a matter of minutes. But in the laboratory setting, it takes forever for this to set. So what I like to do is take a bowl with warm water and then put my model with the denture in the bowl of warm water to allow it to set. Leave it in the bowl for about 10 minutes and we'll come back and we will see if it is set. Okay, so my Reline and my model have been sitting in the hot water for about 10 minutes. You'll know that it's done. It'll feel kind of like alginate. It'll feel firm, but kind of rubbery still, and it's soft, but it's not super sticky or anything like that. I like to go around the edges with my finger and just pull up any little bits that have kind of folded over on the model. And then I like to just hold it with 2 hands and put some pressure on the front to pop it loose and off. So then we want to take a look at our Reline and see how we did. What we're looking for is we want a nice smooth surface on the inside of the denture. We don't want to see any large bubbles or voids. I don't see any large bubbles or voids, but what one would look like would be, let's see if I can show you here. Right here, there's a little bit of a void or a bubble in the edge. I'm actually gonna be cutting this area out, but I just wanted to show you kind of what that would look like. But a nice smooth interior area is what we were going for. Then we're going to do our initial trim of the Reline. So to do this, we're gonna use a barred Parker. I like to hold the denture with the teeth facing down and the Reline facing up. You're gonna hold the barred Parker flush against the buccal or lingual surface like this and move the blade. You're not coming in and cutting across horizontally on the top. And so I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm coming and just cutting right along the side. I'm right up against the denture. This material is sticky. You have to move slow as you do it. I wouldn't recommend pulling because you may have a tendency to pull the material too much and you can create a void that way. So just move slowly, going around the denture, making sure you're staying flush on the buccal or lingual surface. The reason for that is that you want to keep this material that's up on the edge of the denture, because when you seat that back into the patient's mouth, that area is going to be right in their vestibule, and that's going to offer them the comfort that they need. So we don't want to come in and trim that away. We want to keep that area. So I'm gonna go ahead with my knife and I'm gonna go all the way around the denture to get kind of this bulk off first. When you get to the distal portion of the denture, be really careful that you're not taking off too much material there. We'll come around the lingual. When you're holding it, be careful too that you're not putting pressure up on the edge of the denture, because you can distort the material that way. After you get the bulk off, you're gonna wanna go around and look for any spots that are rough or where there may still be a little bit of excess or just a little funky spot. And then once you have it all nice and trimmed, what you would do on a patient is you would actually seat this back into their mouth for about 10 minutes and have them close. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna allow it to fully set, and it's actually gonna make those edges that you just trimmed contour to their ridges a little bit better. So that's what you would do on a real person. We are just gonna stick it onto our model and just kind of give it a little squeeze, pop it back off. We'll give it another check and then see if there's any other areas that we wanna go in and trim. There's a little bit of bulk on this lingual surface. So just taking your time to go around and make sure that it's well trimmed and nice and smooth for the patient. Once you've had an instructor check you off on your soft reline, you're going to need to remove all of the soft reline from the inside of the denture. I recommend using this white plastic stick. I would not recommend using the barred Parker because it's a bit too sharp and you're gonna scratch the denture. So I would like you to use this white stick, and you can see if I just start scraping, I can pull the material out. It's kind of sticky, kind of messy. Just take your time with doing it and we'll get the dentures nice and clean, and the instructors will check you off and make sure that everything is cleaned up at the end of lab. There we go. Let's talk about cleanup of our Reline materials. When you're cleaning any of the materials that you've used for a Reline, I don't recommend using water. Use only dry paper towels to clean these things. I noticed that when I try to use water, it doesn't mix very well with the chemicals in the material, and it ends up creating a bigger mess to clean up later. So what I recommend is getting some dry paper towels. The eyedropper, you can just wipe that down so that the outside is not sticky. If the bottles got dirty, just wipe the outsides of the bottles down. This measuring vial, this glass one that we put the powder in, you don't need to rinse it out at all. Just leave it as is. Our little mixing spatula, just wipe that clean with a dry paper towel. And with our little cup, you can use your white spatula to kind of scrape out the excess from the cup. And you can also use dry paper towels to just wipe the inside of the cup. You'll want to get as much material out as possible. Make sure these materials are nice and clean for the next person that needs to use them. But like I said, I just don't recommend using water to clean any of these materials. So just dry paper towels is all you should need. Make sure all of your materials are cleaned when you put your tray back on the counter at the end of lab.